What it is, Brad Lee back again with another episode of Dropping Bombs today in the studio, folks. As always, I got a real treat for you. Today, folks, my guest is Mr. Nic McKinley. What's going on, Nick?
Hey, Brad. Thanks for having me here.
Folks, if you guys don't know who this guy is, coincidentally, you know, he's an entrepreneur, I would say, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but
4 companies.
But you're in reality a tech entrepreneur, a former military special operator, and ex-CIA.
Yeah.
That's heavy duty, bro. I want to talk to you.
That was my
and by the way,
education.
what's that?
That was my education.
Yeah, and by the way, known for his dedication to protecting society from child predators, and you're the founder of 2 multi-million-dollar tech companies, and what my favorite is the DeliverFund.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, you're rescuing trafficked children.
Yeah, so a way to think about us at DeliverFund is we are like the Boeing or the Lockheed Martin of the fight against trafficking. So I took my extensive counterterrorism experience from both the military and the CIA, and then just took that and applied that to the fight against human trafficking. And most people think that the best way to fight human trafficking is to get on a plane, go overseas, pretend to be somebody or not, and that kind of works. But I mean, you're a business guy. That's not scalable. That's a services model.
Mm-hmm.
Well, every time you turn that wheel to try to do a rescue, it costs more money. So that doesn't actually fight the problem at the scale of the problem. And so we started building technical solutions and intelligence solutions for law enforcement officers in this country so that we could protect American kids, and we're increasingly helping other countries as well. But all of our donor dollars only focus on protecting American children and arresting human traffickers here in the United States of America.
Yeah, well, again, people want to act like that's not real when reality.
Oh, that's real.
Oh, it's heavy duty real.
I give you some data around that will blow people's minds.
Well, even though, guys, this is not the episode on child trafficking, it's just I want to bring it to people's attention because I don't think people like it. How did all the kids disappear and no one seems to care? And it's like, I care, but what do? I don't know what to do. They're on a milk carton. You know, they're already gone.
Right.
So it's like, for some reason, not more of an issue with people. Like, dude, I love the cause. And DeliverFund is something you can donate to, yeah?
Absolutely.
Is it deliverfund.org? Where is it?
DeliverFund.org/donate. We are, you can find us on, you can find the charity on social media at DeliverFund. That's deliver as in deliver me from evil. Fund as in we need funds. And so you find us on social media, deliverfund.org, but it's 100% donor funded. We give all of the technology that we have, which is extensive and significant, and all the data and training and intelligence to law enforcement for free. And we currently have worked with over 600 law enforcement agencies across the United States simultaneously within the same tech platform. And that's with a staff of 21 people.
Yeah.
So that's fighting trafficking at scale.
Yeah, so folks, go give them some money. $5, $10, $20, $1,000, $10,000. Let's see you pull out your big dog
got a donor
pants
advised
and
fund. We're a good place to invest it.
save some kids. What's that?
I said, if you got a donor advised fund, we're a great place to invest it.
There you go, folks. But I want to talk to you more about your past. Ex-CIA.
That's right.
So you were in the CIA.
I was.
Central Intelligence Agency.
B1.
What's above that as far as law enforcement?
So the Central Intelligence Agency is not law enforcement.
What are they?
We are intelligence collectors. So basically, look at it this
Don't you have a badge and a gun?
So I had a badge and a gun because I was part of a very specialized unit. Now, that badge and the gun did not make me law enforcement. It made me a special agent with special privileges and powers when I was on U.S. soil. But I required the cooperation of law enforcement, and that those privileges and powers were not against U.S. citizens. They were against bad guys who were on our soil. Because, yes, there are a lot of bad guys on our soil who mean us harm.
Do you think there's more now than ever?
I don't have the data to back it up, but it sure makes sense to me that, especially with the southern border issue, not to get political, but that just is what it is, there is 100% going to be more bad guys in this country right now who mean us harm and are just waiting to be activated. Because if I was the Iranians, if I was the North Koreans, if I was anybody who meant us harm, and I had a hard time getting my operatives in through a port, through some type of legal port of entry, That's actually very hard to do these days. When I traveled overseas, I actually didn't oftentimes travel under an alias because the country was too technically capable, and so it was too hard to do that. So if I was Iran or somebody like that, I would just be sending people in across the southern border. That's what I would do.
So when I think of CIA, I think of Jason Bourne and Jack Ryan, and matter of fact, aren't you dubbed the real Jack Ryan?
Yeah. So Amazon did a little 10-minute documentary on me and kind of my life, and they said I was the closest thing they could find to the real Jack Ryan. I think it's important for people to understand that when you look at a character like Jack Ryan, that's actually about 50 people wrapped into one character. But they were like, all right, well, you're an Ivy League guy, and you are kind of a pretty big nerd, but you are also a shooter, right? I mean, I can fight and shoot with the best of them. So, all right, we'll go ahead and make a little mini documentary about you. I think the pickings were just real slim.
So who are the spooks?
That is, when you think spooks, it depends on if you're thinking inside the United States or outside the United States.
Well, spies and shit. When I think of CIA, I think of spies and, double agents, what is a spy? James Bond,
a spy MI6. Is somebody who's going to steal a secret, right? At the CIA, for the most part, we don't have spies. We have people who handle spies. So the Russian general, for lack of a better analogy, that person is the spy. And then they have a case officer who's responsible for handling that person, basically getting them their requirements and helping them understand what it is that they need them to do and what the upside is going to be for them, because eventually there's going to need to be an upside to get them to do that, right? Otherwise, you do that in, say, a place like Russia, it's a bullet in the head in the basement of the Kremlin, and that's the end of the story.
Does that shit really happen there?
That happens a lot. Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. So the Kremlin, that's the government.
Yeah. So the Kremlin is the Russian government.
Yeah. So you're saying the Russian government kills people in the Kremlin. That would be the equivalent of saying, you fuck around, dude, they bring you in the White House and shoot you in the face.
Yep. That's basically it.
Do you think that happens at the White House?
That does not happen at the White House.
How do you know?
Because I think when we look at our government, people are putting way too much faith in the abilities of our government. Our government is just not that good. Well, and that's not to disparage our government, right? I mean, there's incredible men and women who are working every single day. Like right now, you and I are not experiencing any type of kinetic event here in Las Vegas because there are people putting their lives on the line overseas, taking the fight to those people, right? So when I talk about the government, let's take those folks out because those are really good men and women.
But people don't think of them as the government.
No. Let's talk about our politicians.
That's
There's our problem.
Yeah, most people, just so you know, because I'm a regular folk, I'm what you call a civilian. Okay, when I think of CIA, I think of spies. I think the word spook, which is almost like a nickname for a CIA, or there's another 3-letter agency. Is it NSA?
So there's a bunch of them. There's actually 16 different intelligence agencies in the U.S., but the big ones that people think of are the Central Intelligence Agency and the NSA. So the CIA
Which one has jurisdiction over another?
Neither one. The NSA primarily reports to the Department of Defense, and the CIA reports to one person.
Who?
Ultimately, the President of the United States.
So right now, the CIA is run by frickin' Joe Biden. And that's who they answer to?
Yeah.
So technically
gives the orders, that or whoever he delegates, which let's be honest, he's got that delegated right now.
Of course.
But
who is that?
So that's going to be Director of CIA, National Security Advisor. Could be any number of people. Could be the Director of National Intelligence.
So if they want to bug someone's house, do they call the CIA?
Overseas, yes. Yeah. So look at it this way.
Again, for me, I'm a little bit of a conspiracy whack.
Well, so inside the United States, that would be that would be the FBI. So if it's a U.S. citizen, that'd be the FBI. And if anybody's like, oh no, that's not true. Okay, look at it this way: there's an executive order that Reagan passed called Executive Order 12333. The passing of that, or the should we say, the establishment of that executive order basically took most of the fun out of a lot of the stuff that the CIA was doing. That's why there's only 2 units at the agency that are operational facilitators and shooters. Like, I'm talking like people who carry guns in anger against our enemies. I was in one of those units, and then there's another unit within the Special Activities Division, or they're calling themselves a Special Activities Center now. But
SOC.
Yeah. So those,
or is it SAC?
That's really it. Huh?
Special Activities?
Special Activities Center. And then you've got another one, and the Special Activities Center, that is like, they literally have a webpage. You can go to CIA.gov. You can look at it. You know, I mean, the information that they put out. What I was part of is still classified, which is really stupid because there's literally been books and movies about my unit and some of the stuff that they did in Libya, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. And I take it seriously because when you think about it from a business perspective, I signed national security non-disclosure agreements, which is basically me giving my word to the Central Intelligence Agency that I would not do things, not, well, I won't do this unless it benefits me, or I won't do this unless I decide that this is a stupid rule. No, I gave my word I wouldn't do something. This was dumb as I think it is. I keep my word, because if I won't keep my word to the Central Intelligence Agency, what are the chances I'm going to keep my word to you? Right?
Yeah, I'm one of those guys that, you know, you should keep your word, period. But it doesn't mean I can't ask about it.
Oh, no, absolutely. So let's break this down real quick. So inside the United States against U.S. citizens, that's going to require a court order. Usually going to come from a FISA
supposedly
court. Well, it's usually going to come from a FISA court, but that's the like rubber stamp court that was happening. There's all kinds of issues there, and those aren't conspiracy theories. Those are like real, no kidding issues. We're seeing the lawfare of the DOJ. We're seeing the lawfare of the FBI.
Explain what lawfare is.
Lawfare is using the law to go after your enemies. It's no different
locally.
Yeah, locally, like in the United States. Now, what the Central Intelligence Agency does is the overseas stuff. So the FBI and the DOJ, the Department of Homeland Security, why we have all of those is beyond me. I don't agree with it, but no one asked me. All of those look in. The CIA and the NSA look out. So what did I do? Was I a spy? Look at it this way. I was more of a professional criminal. I went over to other countries. I broke their laws. I evaded their security and their cops and people who were trying to find me, and I got out.
That sounds like fun. Can someone volunteer for that?
That is super fun. You can go right now on the CIA website and you can volunteer, and they have a 1% acceptance rate. It's getting into a staff position at the Central Intelligence Agency was not as hard as trying out and making it into special ops in the military, but it was much more selective in that it's in the military and in the special operations world, you know what the standard is for the most part. It's a little bit different with like Delta selection and things like that, but for the most part, you know what the standard is. You got to do this many push-ups within 2 minutes. You got to do this many pull-ups within a minute, right? You got to run this fast, stand underwater this long. I mean, you know, it's pretty black and white. It's kind of a meritocracy.
And
CIA,
physical.
yeah, well, it's physical, but anybody who has the physical aptitude to be able to get into those selection programs has the physical aptitude to graduate that program. It's all in their head for the most part.
Really?
I mean, most people quit in their heads because their bodies are capable of way more than they can imagine. Now,
that's a bomb diggity, folks.
Heck yeah. Now, the CIA, what are they looking for?
Smart people.
That is incredibly classified. Dude, I got in. And like, I'm probably above average intelligence guy, but like, I'm not the smartest guy on the planet, and I got in. But other people that I know who I think, from my opinion, were quite frankly smarter, faster, and stronger than I was, they didn't get in.
Why do you think that is? Are you moldable?
No idea. They never vary, but they never showed me those shiny rocks, right?
But maybe they know you won't tell.
It's not so much about tell. It's more about can you work in that environment and be able to mold into the environment. So if you're in like, so I'm in Kandahar, right? That is you're a hammer in Kandahar. But then you go to say, theoretically, because I'm not allowed to say the actual specific locations I was at, but theoretically, let's say I go to Pakistan. Well, that's a very, very different environment. One is camouflage and beards and guns and grenade launchers, and like you're there for a fight. The other one is you got a Glock in your pocket and a cell phone and like try not to get caught, and which quite frankly is a whole lot more fun.
Yeah, but what if you do get caught? Are you disavowed?
They have, if you are, how do I say this? So I started as a guy on a team, and then I became a team leader. If you're a team leader and you're on that GS pay scale, they are not going to disavow you. If you are a guy on a team, they have the right to disavow you, and to my knowledge, they never have. In fact, one of our guys on a team got wrapped up in Pakistan, and you can Google a guy named Ray Davis. It's all out in the media, and we spent a considerable amount of taxpayer treasure to get him back. And Leon Panetta did that. And whether you agree with Panetta's politics or not, he did not have to do that. And
he should.
He absolutely should. But man, the stories I can tell about politicians.
Well, dude, that's what I was getting into, because like I just get too wrapped up with conspiracy. Like, for example, who killed JFK?
Oh man, I don't know that kind of stuff.
It was the CIA, bro. And if it wasn't the CIA, then it was the NSA, or it was the government. Who shot or who attempted or allowed for Donald Trump to be assassinated.
So think about
the
your
government, dude. Well, that was a sanctioned hit, bro.
See, that's
dude,
where
it's too many stupidities. You can't tell me all these people are that stupid.
They are.
They said
what I'm trying to tell you.
Why wouldn't you have anybody on that roof? Oh, the safety of the slant, dude. It was slanted like this.
That was them trying to cover their ass after the fact.
Okay, right? But cover my ass. That wouldn't be covering my ass. You know what I would say? I would say, dude, we fucked up and someone needs to be fired.
And that's why
they seen this kid. This kid's cell phone pinged at the FBI building 3 months leading up to the assassination.
That's why you wouldn't do well inside the government.
I know, but
it's part of the big reason why
because there's cover-ups, isn't there?
It's not cover-ups. So yes, there is cover-ups of stupidity though. So what I try to help people understand,
there's nothing evil is what you're saying.
Right. What I try to help people understand is don't attribute to malice that which can be explained through stupidity.
Yeah, I hear you.
And
that may be the explanation, and we're all taking it too far and giving them too much credit, which is your point.
That's my point. Your government is just not that competent.
Wow.
It's just not that competent. I mean, a classified military unit, which SEAL Team 6, right, that's supposed to be a classified unit, goes and shoots bin Laden in the face, and what does the President of the United States do? Talk about it. And then we get all kinds of books about it. And people breaking national security non-disclosure agreements right and left. Some of them are, some of them aren't, right? And I'm not going to get into debates on whether or not that's the right thing to do, but people just have to understand the government is just not that competent. I mean, look at who your politicians are. I mean, do you look at your
they're
list?
Not really running shit.
But they're not. It's the so what people call the deep state, right? That's not fully a conspiracy theory. What is a conspiracy theory is there's this cabal of super brilliant geniuses who put together this, plan to enslave mankind, and they did it 100 years ago. That is complete and total bullshit. What does happen, though, is people go into the government, because as an example, if you want to jump out of airplanes and shoot at people and shoot back, there's kind of only one place you can do that. So
where, military?
In the military or
law enforcement,
or the CIA. Yeah, law enforcement doesn't jump out of airplanes into foreign countries, right? I mean, and not to take away from what law enforcement does, because they got an insanely hard job in this country, and we're only making it harder on them. But it's apples and oranges. It's not even close to the same thing. So if you want to go rescue you want to be the guy that is on the team that the President of the United States deploys to go rescue a hostage in Somalia, and you're going to free fall in, right? So basically skydive in with guns in the middle of the night and sneak up on these guys and smoke them and then extract this hostage. That's cool stuff. I mean, that's like, and that's real. Like, that's a real mission that SEAL Team 6 did. So,
Yeah, but see, like, that's what I'd want to volunteer for.
right. So you volunteer for that, but then who is actually like making policy? It's not some shooter on SEAL Team 6. It's some usually college grad who probably couldn't really hack it in business, doesn't really have a lot to offer, got a really cush job, and they're not really pushing hard. And so what do? They hobnob around the government, and they brown nose their way up in leadership ranks, and now they're in charge of the people. They have a chip on their shoulder about essentially being better than them. And then those folks, like any job, when you end up with a toxic leadership environment, they go, you know what? I'm out of here. And so those folks leave. And so who's left? Not the best and brightest. And so that's why you have so much in the government that goes wrong. Now add on top of that bureaucratic bloat. I mean, if I 10x'd your employee count, I just 10x'd your problems. How big has the government got? When you look at the size of the government, as far as how many jobs it's providing in as compared to the rest of the population, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So what is happening inside the United States? It's not only that inside the government, it's not only that the right hand isn't talking to the left, it's that the index finger isn't talking to the thumb on the same hand. Then you throw in the politics of it, which is, well, we don't want to be too successful in this mission over here because that would be a feather in the cap of this president that we don't like. I know that happened a lot during the Trump administration, and I also know for a fact that happened during the George W. Bush administration. So we're not going to do too much because we don't want to make the president look too good so we can prepare for the next election. And that's
politics.
That's politics. And so when you look at when we think about the people in our government, it's very important that we keep these two things separate. So I'll see people online, and I'm not a big online guy. I'm like not a big Instagram guy or anything like that, right?
And by the way, your Instagram is
the.Nic McKinley.
Go make him a big Instagram guy, Bomb Squad. Go follow him.
Mainly just posting, DeliverFund, child exploitation related stuff and all that, just trying to get the word out. So what ends up happening is, as the government grows, right, and as the government starts to say, okay, who is best for us, right? Because you got to keep in mind the government has its own incentives, right? The political class has its own incentives. So essentially, think of it as upper middle management. So think of it as like a vice president level and above. It's all political for the most part. I'm not saying that there aren't good people here and there, but for the most part, it's all political. And they really like the politics. Below that is your worker bees. So the shooter on the ground in Afghanistan, he doesn't care who the president is. He doesn't care what party's in power. He doesn't care about any of that. You know what he cares about? Surviving, not getting blown up. I was going to
say getting home safely.
Yeah, not taking around not taking around, not having his buddy get killed, and accomplishing the mission. Like that, those are the things that he cares about. All right, so that's easy. And when I hear people say like, oh, they're super pro veteran, especially pro special ops vets, which have done the major majority of the heavy lifting in the war on terror, but then they're anti-CIA. It's like, well, who do you think staffs those kinetic units at the CIA? It's all those former shooters. It's former CAG dudes and pararescuemen and SF and MARSOC and SEALs and all of that. So we need to delineate between the people who are doing the work and then the political class. And the problem is, like, you can't rise up in ranks to be a 4-star general without being political. And I think everybody saw that with some of the generals who have been called before Congress to testify on different D&I issues, COVID vaccines, those types of things. It wasn't about, well, my job as a general. In fact, I would say maybe General Miller, General Mattis, probably a couple of the last two that we had, who the one thing they cared about was making their branch of the military as lethal as possible. And that, quite frankly, is the only thing they should care about. Take care of their troops and make them as lethal as possible. Instead, we've got these politicians getting in there. So if that's happening at the military level, what do you think is happening at the DOJ and the EPA and all these other government agencies, the FDA, the Department of Education,
IRS?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot wrong with our government.
So we're just going to quit talking about all this now.
Well, there's a lot wrong with our government, and what you saw with the Trump, with what happened with Trump, that was what is all the problems with our government on full display. And what is the biggest problem? So like if there's, I'm sure in some of your companies you've got investors. If you've bootstrapped all this, man, amazing.
I did, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Well, I've got investors in my companies.
I wasn't smart enough to get investors.
I didn't
know to do that. Like I was such a dumbass, but unfortunately I did it bootstrap.
That's a better long-term outcome. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's true.
So take the win. So when you look at, if something goes wrong in your company, buck stops with you.
Yeah.
And my guess is if you bootstrapped all this, I'm going to make a hypothesis that you're a big self-accountability leader. You hold your people to account, but you also hold yourself to account. And I could probably go ask some of your employees and say, hey, has Brad ever said, hey guys, I'm sorry, I screwed this up? And I'm probably going to find somebody and be like, oh yeah, he'll admit when he was wrong. Did you see that happen in the government at all? Do you ever see that happen in the government? Have you, like, we won Afghanistan until we decided to forfeit. How many generals slapped their rank on the table and said, that's on me, and forced mandatory early retirement, right? And resigned. How many during this Secret Service issue? I mean, the director of the Secret Service basically had to be significantly pressured into resigning. How many people have been fired?
Because again, so who's in control?
The mob is in control. It's just a bunch of group think. So if
is it like Larry Fink?
No.
Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, all the billionaires that get together in Davos every year?
They're playing the game.
I know, but
that's all they're doing.
Well, again, they may be, but like sometimes they're like, hey, we need this little country to fall. Let's send the CIA over there and literally cause their government to crash.
But they're not sending the
CIA operatives in the government, their government, doing shit to cause it to crash, so we can come in and swoop up their oil reserves or whatever. I mean,
yeah. So they're looking out for their own best business interest, right? One way or the other. They're not sending the CIA in anywhere. That's, again, back to our political class. That is the corruption in our political class. So how is it that you have senators who make $165,000 a year and after 4 years are worth $20 million? Like, I want to know who their broker is, because like I'll give him everything I got. So how is that? That's
inside information.
Exactly. They're the only, so our political class are the only people who are legally allowed to basically do insider trading, and then we wonder why we have problems. The incentives are misaligned. I mean, if you make me king for a day, I'm going to tell you that if you are an elected politician, you aren't allowed to hold stock. But I'm also going to say that if you're a congressman, we're going to start you at, I don't know, $2 million a year, because I want you solely focused on that issue. The President of the United States, cool, that's $100 million a year job, but you can't own anything else. And so we have to realign the incentives.
I don't know about that, but
I mean, why not?
Definitely more than they get.
Most
$100 million, bro. That's ridiculous.
Most difficult job in the world.
What is?
President of the United States.
Oh, please.
Yeah, come on. Right?
Dude,
if you're doing it right. If you're doing it right.
Well, maybe if you're doing it right, but you'd end up dead if you're doing it right.
I don't think you'd end up dead.
Sure you would.
Yeah.
Because you'd fix the machine, and there's people that don't want that machine fixed. That machine fills their pockets.
But no one's. So I don't think, and I only say this because, be careful how I say this. I have firsthand knowledge of how our government kills people, right? It's no secret. I'm not revealing anything classified. We freaking drone smoke people all the time, and we do it other ways too. So I know firsthand what it takes to get that done.
Drone strike somebody?
Oh yeah. It's a significant bureaucratic hurdle to go over.
Oh, you mean to have someone authorized, go blow that up?
Yeah, to say, go kill that person, right? However you do it, go kill that person.
And how often does that happen?
More than you think.
Like daily?
Not daily.
Monthly?
Monthly, probably.
So we are monthly. Our government, somewhere in the government, is saying someone in another area of the world needs to die.
Right. Because they represent an imminent threat to the homeland or to the United States of America or one of our partners.
Damn, that would be fucked up to catch yourself in that situation. Would you be the one that snuck in and killed him?
So it doesn't really work that way. That's movie stuff. That's very, very high risk way of doing things. It doesn't take a lot of Googling to figure out our primary way of doing it is to get somebody close enough to make sure it's actually them in the car or whatever. And then we send a telephone pole through their windshield. You know, that's the primary way that something like that happens. The bureaucratic hurdle that you have, like, I mean, we're talking people who are like actively building things to try to hurt Americans, and they don't meet the threshold in order to smoke them, and so they'll still try to like just watch them for a little while. Which is something I actually, quite frankly, don't agree with. I think if we sent a much stronger message to our enemies, we would have less bold enemies. And not all of our enemies, you got to keep in mind, are actually state actors. Some of them are nation-state sponsored groups, right? You look at like Hezbollah is a great example. Like people, right? So Hezbollah is in the news now. Hamas is in the news. Who are those groups? Are they independent organizations? No, man. Who's funding them? It's Iran, right? So when you say Hezbollah, you say that's the equivalent of saying Delta Force in America, right? So they are a highly trained, or a lot of them are a highly trained subset of the Iranian Republican Guard Corps and their special ops, which is called the Quds Force, right? So we don't have organized crime syndicates in America that we then leverage to go out and do our bidding. But Russia does, Iran does, North Korea does, the Chinese do, so all of our enemies do. And organized crime to them, that is just that's just hiring the pirates to protect the ships as far as they're concerned. So that's kind of the way it works. That's why like a lot of these conspiracy theories, like when people say, oh, the deep state is controlling things. Well, yeah, because the deep state, what I'm talking about is the political class, the unelected political class. They can slow roll things. They can make sure that the system doesn't quite work. And then when you look at our politicians, their incentives are completely misaligned, and they don't really care about the people. They care about, that's where the Black Rocks and those types of people come in. So I look at this and I say, who is at fault? I'm a pretty strong consequential capitalist, right? I think that capitalism in its truest form works. We have crony capitalism in this country. That's why we're starting to see a big divide. But that crony capitalism is because we have politicians who are allowed to essentially engage in legal corruption and get incentivized.
Well, they're the ones that are making the laws.
Right.
Of course. So again, why are we all so stupid? We don't just get rid of those guys. Like they all need to be removed.
That's a problem I can't solve.
And put brand new people in with the rules modified a smidge. Like, okay, I'm sorry, we didn't even think of this, but y'all can't invest in shit that you hear because that's called insider trading. And if you can do it, we can do it. And if you don't want us to do it, then you can't do it either. They should live by the same rules.
So here's something. If you had an opportunity to regulate, now you might not, but if you had an opportunity to regulate your competition out of business, would you take that opportunity?
Well, of course, everybody would, but I wouldn't because I'm such an angel.
Well, but also, I mean, I wouldn't. You know why I wouldn't?
Why wouldn't?
Because I like the competition. Like that feeds
Well,
me. That fuels me.
in that case, no, I'd get him right out of biz. I'd be like the fucking monopoly guy.
Right.
But I understand what you're saying.
But so that's what.
But most people would, yeah, they want to get him out of there.
That's what they're doing. So why does
you make it seem so innocent, like they're just a bunch of dumbling idiots?
Oh no,
like,
they're highly intelligent and they are working in their own incentive structure. And so
the politicians?
No, the you just like you mentioned BlackRock is a great example, or big pharma companies or any of those.
Because they're the ones that afford to
tech.
buy the competition. I mean, not the competition, the politicians.
Right.
So in my opinion, and I don't know shit, just looking around, it's obvious, like Joe Biden, for example, he ain't in charge of shit. Everybody knows that.
I think everybody knows that now.
All right, so again, president, bullshit.
Right.
Okay, what next? Vice president? That cackling idiot, she ain't in charge of shit. It's not her. Now, could I believe that Obama's still in charge? Oh, I could totally believe that. I could totally believe that. Why? Well, because he's got his two dumb fucking puppets out front. But it's fucking Obama, and everybody knows it, but no one gives a shit. Why? That's the corruption part. Like, what do you mean you know it, but you can't say anything? Whether it's the CIA, well, I took an oath, or it's the NSA, well, or the director of the FBI, well, that's called, now we're criminal. Mm-hmm. It's a criminal empire, and it's powerful because it's got the rubber stamp of the U.S. government.
And the U.S. government has close to a monopoly on violence. And so when we say violence, I'm not just talking about physical violence, right? Because that's the end. Now, the U.S. government, thanks to the Second Amendment, does not have a monopoly on physical violence. And when you hear presidents say things like, well, if you want to take on the government, you better have an F-15, tell that to a bunch of goat herders in Afghanistan who had 40-year-old rifles that barely worked and have now thrown out the two largest empires the world has ever seen.
Which is what?
Russia and the United States.
What do you mean throwing them out?
So Charlie Wilson's war in the 80s.
Yeah, but dude, like,
they
again,
threw them out.
I know, but like, to me though, someone let that happen. No,
because dude,
you don't stack up against an F-15 with your little fucking sheep herder rifle unless someone allows it.
Oh yeah, you do.
How?
Oh yeah, you do. I mean, if we could, we lost considerable blood in the war on terror, and it wasn't for lack of trying to stay alive. And so
what was it for?
Well, unless you're just going to carpet bomb cities, just like, all right, we're just going to freaking turn this thing into...
Aren't they doing that now to freaking Gaza and freaking Israel or whatever that war is?
Well, so the Israelis will do that. The Russians will do that, but we don't do that.
Why not?
Because indiscriminate weapons are cheap and discriminate weapons are expensive. So why is it that the Houthis are sending $2,000 drones, maybe $20,000 on the high-end drones to attack ships, and we're turning around and launching a $20 million asset at them?
Is that overkill? Or is your question, why are we doing it?
Yeah, why does that happen?
Well, again, stupidity.
No.
Why?
Because the defense contractors have convinced all of our politicians that, you know what, we need to have these super high-tech weapons that are so precise that, like, they don't even blow up. We just freaking ninja blade people. And if the Houthis are going after us with, $2,000 water-based drones, well, you're going to need to fight back, and we have a $20 million package that'll help you do that.
Well, this is called robbery.
Well, it's
they're selling them.
But they're selling them, but that's not robbery.
But you don't need it.
Right. And that's because you've got again, the political class. So anybody who, you look at what's happening in Ukraine right now. Ukraine didn't have a lot of drones, and they said, cool, we're going to buy DJI drones off the shelf, and then we're going to start building our own, and we're going to turn them into weapons. And they're doing that for pennies on the dollar. I mean, like a couple $100, right? And they're taking out tanks with a couple $100 worth of, like, some nerds in a garage with a soldering iron and some explosives.
All it takes.
That's all it takes. And you could put any E4 Marine who has a GED in the room with Boeing, and he's going to say, okay, hey, here's how you solve this problem, and it's going to cost a couple $100. It's not going to look real sleek and sexy. It's going to have some duct tape and baling wire on it, but it's going to get the job done, and it's going to be extremely cost effective. But instead, we have generals, most of whom have never gone to war, so officers don't really fight in the field anymore, and that is a huge problem. And so you've got a senator who says, well, they're going to manufacture these weapons in my district, and I want the jobs. And hey, general, who has to be confirmed by the Senate, right? Has to be confirmed by the politicians. It would be great if we could go ahead and get the contract for, to this company. And then the general says, oh yeah, that weapon, that actually is a great weapon. Hey, Mr. President, we really need that. And then it goes in the budget, and that's the way it happens. That's what happened with the V-22 Osprey. V-22 Osprey, which is that tilt rotor, right? Pretty freaking cool plane. But I'll tell you, the operator level, we hate those things.
Why?
They kill operators and pilots faster than anybody because they fall out of the sky because of physics, right? I mean, that's an extremely hard problem to solve. And we had amazing platforms, one of which had been around since
F-16?
Since Vietnam. No, the
F-22 Raptor?
MH-53 helicopter. It could carry more cargo. It wasn't quite as fast, but that's just because the airframes were old. All those defense contractors, if we would have said, hey, make this thing faster by 30%, they would have had it done inside a year. It would have cost the taxpayers significantly less money. But no, we got this aircraft that when I was in Afghanistan, we had these, CV-22s, and really all they were doing was transporting people around and delivering the mail. No combat operations. So that's the way that happens, is nobody's asking the guy on the ground. And then most of our politicians and most of our political class don't have a whole lot of experience on the ground. And it's one of the big reasons I left the CIA is my unit did more what are called operational acts, right? So think of that as deals. Think of that as business deals. My unit did more operational acts in a 7-year period than the rest of the entire agency combined, because we facilitate all the really, really dangerous stuff, right? And when, I think it was about 2013, 2014, sometime in there, they said, you have no women in your team. Well, yeah, because the prerequisite to get into that unit was you had to have a minimum of 6 years of special operations experience. Training didn't count. So for a pararescueman like me, that meant you had a minimum of 8 years in the military, and you had to have at least 3 combat deployments under your belt. Like, that was the prerequisite. Unfortunately, it wasn't always held, but that was the standard that was supposed to be held. And there's no women in special ops, therefore women aren't even eligible to try out. And then when you go to the CIA tryout, we still had people with those kinds of backgrounds failing out. And one of the only units in the CIA where you're required to take a physical fitness evaluation every single year. You're required to take...
See, that should be normal police officer. That should be normal. Anybody in those kind of positions should automatically have to.
You had to take quarterly shooting tests, basically, right? Evaluations.
When you see really out of shape police officers, just police.
Sure.
And they're fat, they're huge, they're like not just chunky police officers, but good size, overweight police officers. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, keep paying them. I don't even care about their pay. They can't. You can't. How are they going to run me down? How are they going to run a criminal down? How are they going to, get in a fight and defend themselves? Like, dude, it's just stupidity. And this is why, I get frustrated, because this is not rocket science shit to figure out and fix, but no one can do it. So why?
Because we're focused on the wrong things.
You think that's the case?
I think that's exactly the case.
I think it's because there is a little freaking criminal empire at the top, dude. Dude, there are some smart son of bitches.
So I do think that in a couple of ways. So we have a drug enforcement agency, and cocaine is as prevalent as it ever has been, and we have all this fentanyl on the streets. Why? So I will say
they want it on the streets.
I will say that there are
funds their wars.
Funds that don't want the system to work too well. I firmly believe that, and I've seen that happen. Now, do I again? Is it some big freaking global cabal kind of thing? No, it's not that.
Then how did they get every single governmental entity on Earth to buy into the COVID bullshit?
Well, that's simple. That's just groupthink, man. The United States of America, the most powerful country the world has ever seen. We supposedly have all the science minds. We have all the money. I mean, if Elon Musk came in here and sat down and said, "Hey, Brad, X, Y, and Z," you'd probably give a lot of weight to that. That's what happened. Is we said, "Hey, here's the way we see things," and everybody said, "Oh, well, if America saw it."
Well, I thought it was happening in Italy first.
In my venture capital work, what we see happen a lot is, don't think that the Italian scientists are not communicating with the American scientists, and Fauci's telling them exactly what to do, and then they're just doing it, right? Just like getting in line like lemmings. And our science establishment getting in line like lemmings is a whole other issue. But when you look at the way that lobbyists are allowed to influence senators and congressmen, like that's a problem. I mean, K Street is one of the obviously wealthiest streets in the country, right? Some of the most highly paid people. Why? Because they can get lobbyists to go convince senators and congressmen, many of whom are just not that bright, and go convince them of things,
or bribe them,
or bribe them. I mean, we know that happens. And then what happens? People just follow the leader. I mean,
it's crazy, isn't it?
People are sheep for the most part. So let me get back to what happened at the agency, and you'll be like, I think you'll understand this. So, arguably one of the most operationally effective units in the entire U.S. inventory. They say there's no women, so DE&I is starting to creep up. And
what's DE&I?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? All the stuff that's killing a lot of business. And so what did they do about that? They fired our chief, who was a good man. They fired one of our deputy chiefs, who was a good man. And they replaced them with 2 women, one of whom had never been outside the United States of America, and they were logistics specialists. And that's important work. Like, we need people to do that work. But they were completely unqualified to be running that unit. And when I saw that happen, I was like, oh man, this is bad. And I'm not going to be able to fix this. So I was the 3rd one out the door. Within that year, we lost 40% of the whole unit. So what do you think happened to standards? Because you got to fill the bodies.
Drop. Now you got a bunch of blue-haireds. Now you got a bunch of goofball, transgender,
and that's
goofballs.
Yeah, so the 7th floor doesn't go to war. They have no idea about the realities on the ground, and they just go, oh, your standards are too high. We're going to change those standards because we need to get some different people in here. We need some diversity in here. We were fighting actually to get literally a sister unit. We wanted another unit of women that we would train up. We would select and train up. Delta Force has this, by the way, and that's what we wanted to do, and that's what we were advocating for, because we knew that what are the chances that we were going to find a woman who could meet the same standard as everybody else? 0. Again, needed a special ops background, and it's not fair to the women that they eventually ended up getting in that unit, because then they go down range, and all the men in the unit are like, yeah, you didn't do the same things I did. You didn't earn it, not like I did, and that creates all kinds of problems, right? Leadership problems. So that's what happens in the government. People just make these decisions where they go, oh, you need women in your unit. And hey, chief of staff, make that happen. And next thing you know, people get fired.
That's the political.
That's the political class.
Yeah. So again, we need to get rid of the political class, and then hopefully it should correct it.
Yeah.
Because again, I mean, if someone at the top, like who's letting these people go? Who's the one saying, oh, sorry, we're going to let a girl in here because it's a girl? Like, someone's making that decision, just like but schools with books and shit that shouldn't 100%. Be in schools in 3rd grade. Like, who's the committee? Who's the superintendent? Who's the person that is allowing this or authorize this, because they need to be removed, period.
So let's take schools. Let's take our political class. And this is something that I bring up a lot.
Schools are trying to say to children.
Oh, yeah.
oh, it's okay for you to be this or that. Like, why not just leave them alone and let them discover? Like, if I'm gay, I'm going to figure that out, right?
Yep.
You don't need to coach me into it, and you don't need to let me be aware of it, and you don't need to include that I might be. You just need to freaking do what's normal.
Teach me how to write, teach me how to read,
write, do math, build relationships, like build businesses.
Logic.
But don't worry about whether I'm gay or straight.
Yeah.
And don't talk about gay or straight. What's it got to do with anything? And sex education in the 3rd grade? Shut the hell up.
But that is being allowed by the school boards, right?
Get rid of those school boards.
So you and I, we just talked about school boards. We just talked about Congress, right, in our political class. And here's the next question I ask everybody that makes everybody super uncomfortable. Is your wife running for school board?
Nope.
Are you running for Congress?
Nope.
That's our problem.
Do you know why, though?
Why?
Because you're not getting in.
Maybe.
No, there's no maybe, dude.
I got a couple friends who are in Congress.
Dude, it takes you millions and millions of dollars to become anything, and they made it that way.
Eli Crane is a congressman out of junior congressman out of Arizona, like his former SEAL. Like, I know Eli. He's a great dude. I don't agree with all of his stances he's taken on things, but like if you ever find anybody I 100% agree with, like that's a problem in itself. But he's just a good old boy entrepreneur, started a company.
Now he's congressman.
After he left now he's a congressman.
Is he a good one?
Matt Waltz. Yeah, I think so. I think he has things to lose, and I don't say that judgmentally because like I'd probably do a way worse job than he does. But
see, I wouldn't. I'd do the best job possible, but I'd probably quit too. Because once you get in there, I'll bet you he realized he can't fix this shit. Dude.
And that I think is the big problem. It's just like at the agency, it was like, I'm not going to solve this problem. I'm out. There's so many junior officers and mid-grade officers in the military who go, yeah, I'm not going to go into that room and be that guy. I'm out.
And you can't, because you'd be removed. You'd be suppressed. You'd be killed. Depending on who you are, you're not getting away with it.
You just wouldn't get influence.
So
you'd reach 06 and they would just say, yeah, we're not putting you up for general.
Yeah, but see, who's the we that says that?
It's a collective. It's not this small group. It's basically just a bunch of group think.
Ah, man.
I mean, you can't tell me with like COVID's a great example. Whether you got the vax or didn't get the vax or any of that stuff, it doesn't matter. Why are we calling it a vaccine? It wasn't a vaccine. It's a therapeutic. But most people didn't understand that. And so because they were just doing the like, oh, well, the media told me that I should, and the automatons come out, right? So that's why I think that a lot of what we call conspiracy theories, they're not conspiracy theories. It's not and the way I talk about the difference between conspiracy theory and truth is, in my mind, a conspiracy theory is something that is premeditated. They say, okay, we're going to move these pieces on the chessboard, and here's what's going to happen. What I'm saying is that that's not what happens. It's just chaos erupts. And quite frankly, if it wasn't for the businesses in this country would fold tomorrow. And when I started like fighting child exploitation is a great example. The quick story, anybody who's heard me on like Patrick Bet David or anybody who's heard the long version, but the short story is I'm in Lashkar, Afghanistan, and we had what I like to call smoking gun intel on a child trafficker who was selling children across the Afghanistan-Pakistan border.
What age children? All of them?
Kind of all ages, but primarily specialized in young boys. And it's some pretty sick stuff.
Yeah, but what's young 16? Are you talking about like 8, 9, 10-year-olds?
I'm talking about as young as like 4. Like really sick stuff. So I'm there with a TFO, so a JSOC counterpart, right? Joint Special Operations Command counterpart. And we were talking about it, and like, this is the kind of thing you join the government to do, right? Join pararescue because you're going to like freaking carry babies out of burning buildings while freaking shooting bad guys in the head, right? I mean, it's like that's what you want to do. And so you collect intel on terrorism and stuff. Yeah, that's all great. But now, holy smokes, human trafficker. And we tried for weeks to try to figure out what you do with human trafficking intel, because intel doesn't work. Like, it doesn't just all magically show up in the same place, right? So think of it when you write a report and you send up some intel to an analyst who then sends it to another analyst. think of it as banking routing numbers to make sure it gets to the right desk and in front of the right eyes. And the system works very well. Well, there was no code for human trafficking. And we're like, well, surely there's got to be a code for human trafficking. Let's go find the person who is dealing with human trafficking, because we can kill people with flying robots from 6,000 miles away. Surely we're doing something about this human trafficking issue. And there's a version of me and there's a version of these other folks who are dealing with human trafficking issue. And when you're at that level of the agency, it's not like there's anything off limits to you. You can get anywhere you want in the government real fast. Couldn't find anybody who dealt with it. And eventually, like, it was just, that made me start going, wow, this is weird. Let me look into it.
And you think that's because we're all stupid in the government, or because we don't want the flow of children to stop?
So I think
then our flow of children stops.
I think it's kind of a combination of both. And on the like child side, like child exploitation, the child sexual exploitation stuff and whatnot, are there politicians who are probably involved in, child porn and things like that? Sure. I mean, statistically there will be, but I don't think that they don't do that. But what they do not want to stop is the commercial sex industry, which people see those ads. The data is a little more skewed here in Vegas, but nationally, when you look at what people think is prostitution, it's not. It's about 80% human trafficking, because the human traffickers, if a girl, let's just say for whatever reason, some woman decides she wants to prostitute herself and she shouldn't do that, and she's worth more than that. And if you're a man and you're participating in that industry and you've done it more than 3 times, there's 100% chance you have actually fed money into the human trafficking industry. We could say the same thing for porn. We can say the same thing for OnlyFans. Anybody wants to debate it, bring it, but you better bring your data, because these are indisputable facts at this point. What concerns me is that we have a drug enforcement agency, yet 90% of drugs are legal, right? So like cocaine is used to numb the eye of the retina for retina surgery. Fentanyl is legal. I spent a couple of months in and out of the hospital for a bunch of stuff that I've got going on health-wise from 30 combat deployments. And I was getting fentanyl and Dilaudid and all these different things, right, for surgical procedures. So if 90% of drugs are legal, why are we spending double-digit billions of dollars a year fighting the war on drugs, which is not going well, right? We have a bureau.
They have been for a long time,
right? But we're not getting anywhere on it.
Because, dude, and I know, they participate in that profit.
Exactly. They don't want the flow of cocaine to stop. So then we look at and what are the consequences of that? We're killing children at a rate that we've never seen before in this country due to fentanyl overdoses, right? Kids in this day and age, like, I made mistakes, you made mistakes growing up. Thank God there were no cameras around, and those secrets will go to the grave with us. This day and age, kids are in a one mistake world. I thought this was a Ritalin that a friend gave me. Turns out it's fentanyl. Kid's dead. Right? That's happening almost at scale. We have a Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms are all legal. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you've got like all of those within arm's reach of you right over there. Yet we spend billions of dollars a year fighting what is the illicit sale of legal commodities. And no one dies from tobacco, right? So that's a tax issue. Nobody dies really from alcohol. That's a tax issue. Firearms is a constitutionally protected right, yet 100% of human slavery and child trafficking is illegal. And who's got the ball on that issue? Where's our counter human trafficking agency? Where's our government budget that's putting exactly the same amount of money into the child trafficking epidemic, and it is becoming epidemic? Where is that? You don't see it. And why don't you see it? And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, we know, based on news reporting, that politicians do tend to engage in the commercial sex industry, and they don't want to look at what they might be engaging in. So that's the first thing, which is why we do need to, friends on the super far right who think that we should just have this like complete prohibition on commercial sex, we do need to look at policy changes in this country. You look at so they're engaging in that, but then also kids are not a political class. They don't vote. They have nothing to give the politicians, and their children are just fine. And if they're not, they can rally government resources around protecting their children. So that's really the issue. And the biggest way, like the biggest example of this is look at the missing and murdered Indigenous women issue that you primarily have happening in kind of rural America, right? Native girls are going missing. Now there's a lot of connection with the drug trade and like.
See, I've never heard this. What are you talking about? Like,
oh yeah,
on the Indian reservations or something?
Oh yeah. MMIW is
so
what
Native
we call it.
American women are
Native
going
American
missing.
Women are going missing at a staggering rate, and you've never heard of it.
I've never heard of that.
If that was happening to a bunch of middle class white girls, it would be a national.
There's
uproar.
a mass murderer on the loose, folks.
Yeah, it is happening.
But why are we not hearing about it?
Because you're talking about people who don't really have a voice. The politicians don't care about them because
but it's not the politicians that do the speaking. It's the journalists and the reporters.
Yeah, but what's their incentive?
Well, who are they owned by?
Now we're getting somewhere.
Because again, these journalists, dude,
right?
they're running around. They could tell a story, and I'm their boss. And you ain't running that story.
Journalists used to mean something. Today, it doesn't.
Yeah. So again, mainstream media, like there should be some sanctions put on mainstream media to where, dude, if you tell a false story, there's some consequences.
It should be.
Because like, dude, it's ridiculous. You watch the news, they say, let's call it the Trump rally. Mm-hmm. The Trump rallies, then, oh my God, look at the crowds at Kamala's rallies. And there's like 2,000 people at Kamala's rallies. They make it look like there's 20,000, but there's not. There's 2,000. But they say, man, look at the turnout. She's so popular.
Yeah.
And then you look at, Trump, where's Trump? You can't even Google assassination. Google's erased it. So now it's like, wait a minute, how many were at Trump's rally? Oh, dude, nobody likes that guy. And then back to Kamala, look how popular she is.
Yeah.
Dude, what they're trying to do is get everyone to think Kamala's winning and Kamala's the right one and everybody's going to go with Kamala. So what's the point? When in reality, there's 30,000 people at the same rally for Trump.
Regardless of your politics, everybody can see that playing out. So anybody who denies that, like, is just being intellectually dishonest.
Okay, and then on my social media right now, I'm seeing a lot of, dang, Republicans for Kamala. Everybody's for Kamala. Dude, Kamala's crushing in the polls. No way, dude. Again, same thing. Nope, there cannot be this many stupid people.
Misinformation and disinformation campaigns, and that's really easy to do.
But who is that? CIA?
No, so that's your PACs.
See, because everyone's blaming the CIA. CIA get bad name because before you came in here, I'm like, yeah, I want to talk to the CIA guy because I'm going to freaking ask him all this shit.
Yeah.
Because, dude, CIA killed JFK, supposedly. CIA's the bad guys. That's why you call them the spooks. They're the ones that you don't know their name. They come in the middle of the night and they leave and they're spies and they'll whack you and you don't know shit. And not only that, they're the ones controlling everything.
The
CIA.
And the
Cabal,
Tier 1 special operators?
The cabal runs the CIA. The CIA don't answer to nobody.
Yeah. I wish it was that organized, actually.
But it's not.
No.
In reality, the CIA is mostly, you were talking earlier, in reality, the CIA is mostly nerds.
Yeah.
Smart Yale nerds that are really good with intelligence.
Yeah. Really good with numbers.
And none of them have badges and guns or much authority at all.
If you were to walk into the Central Intelligence Agency headquarters.
Does it look like it does in the movie with the medallion thing on the floor?
Yeah. So the CIA actually funny, there's a congressional law, a law, I don't remember which one it is, but basically the reason that you see military jets and aircraft carriers and the CIA SEAL and things in movies is because the building of the Central Intelligence Agency is owned by the taxpayer, and that jet is owned by the taxpayer. And so Congress passed a law that said that, if they can, they're supposed to participate with anybody who wants it. So like if you wanted to film a episode of Dropping Bombs in the lobby of the Central Intelligence Agency, there's a mechanism for you to be able to do that. I have no idea what it is, by the way, but like you can do that. That's why you see, the Wall of Honor, and that's why you see the seal across the floor and all that stuff. So the lobby scenes that you usually see, that's usually the real place. It's that underwhelming. But beyond that,
did you work there every day? You're a field op.
When I was in the United States, I reported to headquarters, but on paper, but the building where my unit was housed was not at headquarters. It was in a different location.
And you're not allowed to talk about that.
I can't say where it is. And nor would I want to. Like, we don't want our,
because there's other people you were replaced. There's more people just like you. You're just not doing it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, man,
what if you wanted to go back? Would they hire you?
Oh, no. In fact, when your cover gets rolled back, and anybody who says that they worked with Central Intelligence Agency, ask for proof. If your cover gets rolled back, so like I have copies of my credentials, as an example, it says copy on it, right? But copies of my credentials. And then also if your cover's rolled back before you go out, which means cover rolled back means that you're now allowed to say that you worked at the Central Intelligence Agency. So if I'm trying to get a job with you and I've got this big 7.5 year gap on my resume, you're going to be like, yeah, I'm not hiring this dude. He's in prison. So like my last W-2 actually says Central Intelligence Agency on the top of it. And so anybody who's like, I worked for the CIA, but I can't prove it, probably full of it.
Because they could prove it.
Because if you actually were there and you are allowed to say that you were there, then you can prove it. And if you can't prove it, then one of two things is true. You were, for lack of a better term, I'll just call it a denied asset, which means that you gave your word that you would not, reveal that you had worked with the CIA, or you're a liar. So you're either untrustworthy or you're untrustworthy, right? One of those two things is true. So that's why, and I have, like I work in venture capital and private equity, and those guys are super careful. And obviously I've got other companies. And so I've had many a billionaire. He doesn't ask me, but I usually get their lawyer. Somebody's like, hey, we're doing due diligence on you. And we need some documentation on this Central Intelligence Agency and on this military thing. Because if you say you were in military special ops, well, then you will get a DD-214 when you leave that says that. And it has one of those career fields on it. And if you don't have that, then
you're full of shit.
You're full of shit. Now, DD-214s are pretty easy to falsify, right? I mean, people do it all the time to get veterans benefits and things that they didn't earn. But CIA, like, that's a whole lot harder. And so, funny story. I was actually working with a entrepreneur who built some really cool stuff out in San Francisco, and he wanted me to kind of help mentor his technical team and leadership, because they're very, very bright people, but they're not real good at working with other people, right? So I try to get him on board, and he's actually the only billionaire who's ever asked me directly. He's like, hey, I need proof of that. And I like carry it around on my phone now because it's so people ask so much. And I don't.
Well, let me be the second.
All right, I'll show you my phones.
Well, first I got to be a billionaire.
In the green room. But I
want to be the second billionaire that asks. So you got to wait. You got to wait a minute.
Anyway, so the point is that, like, when people say I was in the CIA, I was in special ops, if they give you a hard time or get combative about asking you to prove that, because that's a bold claim, then that's a huge, huge red flag, right? It's the same thing as going into a doctor's office and not seeing a medical degree hanging on the wall.
Is there a lot of people out there faking it?
Tons.
What's the purpose?
I was involved in a fraud case in venture capital where the guy who committed the fraud is currently serving a 6-year sentence in federal penitentiary, but he got millions of dollars out of a venture capitalist by completely falsifying his background. That's
well, because if I hired you thinking you were in the CIA and you really weren't,
yeah,
I'm thinking, well, he's got to have some connections to give me.
He's got to help me be able to solve this problem, and I'm representing myself as if I can solve this problem, and so that's the whole reason it's fraud.
Yeah, but you being a real ex-CIA guy, you got to have connections still. You can pick up the phone and get some intel that ain't easy to get.
No, so two things. One, I would never put any of my friends who are still inside in that position, because I know that they can't do that. And what kind of friend would I be if I'm like, hey, dude, I want you to go ahead and commit a felony.
Is that a felony to release?
Dang. Oh yeah, that's a felony. Which again, let's get back to the political class. If I had done, remember Hillary Clinton and the whole server issues and all that kind of stuff, or Biden and the classified stuff and any of that, if I had done that, I would be in prison, like literally locked up.
So why not them?
It's a great question. That just further highlights the problem that we have with our political class.
Well, let's take one more second and talk about how do we fix that then? Because I wanted to talk about more your entrepreneurial shit. Now we're out of time, but like GoPills, for example.
Yeah.
Like these GoPills, the best nootropic on planet Earth for hypercognition.
So I've been in the nootropic space, which is basically just a real fancy way of saying drugs that make your brain work better, right?
Yeah.
Deliver more nutrients and oxygen
Limitless
to your
pill.
brain. Yeah. I've been in that space for about 15 years. But part of the reason I got into it was because my brain was getting really messed up, right? The bowl of Jello up here was getting a lot of shocks from everything from vehicular interdictions, which is where we're purposely crashing cars. I was in 3 helicopters.
With you in them?
Yeah. Because if you want to grab somebody out of a car, like crashing into their car is a real good way to shake them up and grab them. So, purposeful vehicular interdictions. I was in 3 helicopter crashes, a couple of free fall canopy incidents, untold amount of pressure waves from, breaching charges and gunfire in confined spaces going through the bowl of Jello that is your brain. And then now add on top of the fact that you've got about 86 billion neurons in your brain. And all of those neurons connect into what we call synapses. And there's trillions of those in your brain. And it's an electrical signal that basically passes to the other synapse through a chemical signal. So when you start talking those kinds of numbers in the modern environment, what are the chances something goes wrong? A lot. Well, now add the traumatic brain injury on top of that, and the VA, what they want to do is just either diagnose you with PTSD, which I've been fortunate enough not to have, or they give you some other type of prescription drug, which has its other side effects. And so the founders of really kind of the big science brains behind GoPills worked together to kind of create this to solve that problem. But that's a problem that should be coming from the government to solve my problem of traumatic brain injury. But a great example is so I'm a disabled veteran. I don't use the VA. I don't want anything to do with them. I'll take my private doctors and my private health insurance. Thank you. I don't want the government making GoPills because they're going to just screw it up. I'm going to do it.
Well, that's called more a Republican.
Parties aside, I want efficiency. I don't want to get sick.
Right, but it just happens to be if you want less government, then you're more right. If you want more government, well, then you're left.
If that's your voting issue, 100%.
Well, to me, listen, I don't want the government involved in shit other than maybe a referee.
The only thing it says that it has to do is protect and defend. That's what it should be doing, protecting and defend.
And a referee. In other words,
That's the court system.
Yeah, you got a big issue, you can take it to the feds, but 9 times out of 10, it's a state thing. Mm-hmm. What state you do it in, deal with your state. That's your problem. You guys want to make it legal to smoke weed and you don't, okay, then, majority rules, handle it yourself. There's no federal rule against it. I don't understand how right now there's weed. You want to go buy some weed after this? You can go buy weed. Not that there's something wrong with weed, but you can buy weed. But technically, there's people in prison for selling it. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. So if you want to make it legal, get it, let the people go. And let me tell you why the people in prison are still in prison. Because prisons are private. A business.
Yep.
That's a revenue center. And you can't release the people in there. You let a third of the people go. Yeah. And now you got a third of the people out of the prisons. Now the prisons are hurting just because you legalize prison or weed. I know. Let's keep it federally illegal, but not do anything about it at the state level.
But we'll go ahead and play that card and exercise it when it is in our best interest.
If we do, yes. Yeah.
And so that's where...
That's bullshit, though. Again, it's either against the law or it isn't. If it's federally against the law, then every state individual that has allowed it should be arrested and thrown in federal prison. Why? Because didn't we agree to frickin' uphold and defend the law and the Constitution and the rules. Like, I didn't make the rules, but I did say I would enforce them. Mm-hmm. So just like when the cops would stand down, oh, the cops are standing down with this riot because they were ordered by the governor to stand down. Like, listen, if you ordered me to not follow the law and I was a cop, buddy, I'm not listening to you. Mm-hmm. Who are you? You took the same damn oath I did. So if I'm in trouble or fired because I'm not listening to your stupid ass defiant order of the law, because I know the law, and you're telling me to break it, I ain't breaking it. And I'm going to enforce the law because that's the oath I took.
Yeah.
If you had more law enforcement officers stand up like that, I bet you a lot of this would be solved.
And police chiefs standing up.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, the reason I think all this shift happens is because everybody wants to be like, ooh, I'm not going to get involved. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything when someone needs to. But I also believe if anybody ever got close to that, you run into the machine and the machine goes, this guy's got to get. Well, and all of a sudden they call Jack Ryan. And old Nic McKinley be knocking on your door in the middle of the night dressed as a telephone repairman.
Yeah, the way that...
Do you ever do that, by the way? Disguise?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
All the time.
And that's the other thing I heard. Like, government has unbelievable disguise ability where you could be sitting next to a female that's in a man costume and it's legit.
You know what the best disguise is? Especially if you're in a predominantly Muslim country, fundamentalist Muslim country? A burqa. Man, you throw me in a freaking burqa and I got a, Mark 48 under there with about, a couple thousand rounds of freaking ammunition strapped to my body. But I just look like a big fat woman because I just sitting in the back of a car wearing a burqa.
Well, not just,
those are the
burqa is the thing that does this.
Yeah. Like no, the full dress, right? You see like full black dress, or in Afghanistan, a lot of them are light.
Well,
blue.
Obviously, that's the best disguise.
That's the best one, man.
You can see anything with your eyes.
Oh yeah, I used to cross dress in the agency all the time, but like that. But yes, there are incredible disguises. There's actually, if you're interested in that, there's an incredible book by this guy Mendoza who kind of started the whole CIA disguise program and really took it to its next level. And he talks about how they worked a lot with Hollywood and the special effects folks. What
about MK Ultra?
That stuff is all so far before my time. What I will say is that under Reagan, there was a line in the sand that was drawn, and that was Executive Order 12333. What happened before that? I don't know. I won't discount. Like MK Ultra, we know that was a real thing, but how big was it? How prevalent was it? I don't know. But I also won't discount a lot of the conversations around it. All I can talk about is the agency that I was in and what we call 333, pre-333 agency, and then even go back to the OSS, and post-333 agency, two very different places.
So Reagan made a difference.
Reagan made a huge difference, some of which I don't really agree with. I understand why he did it. I don't think he saw the second order effect of it the way that we did.
Why don't you run for president or Congress or something?
And you know why? I did 17 and a half years in the government. I did 30 combat deployments, and I have now been in business for 10 years. So I got a lot of catching up to do. If I would have started these companies that I have and been doing these types of things 20 years ago, my income would be probably 100 times what it is now. But so the way that I look at it is I did my part. And I've done my part, and I need some other people to step up. And also, I'm just done with government. I don't really...
Because it's so stupid, isn't it?
Yeah, I've seen behind the curtain. I know it's an elephant back there. And so I don't really have a good taste in my mouth. And I get that a lot where people are like, well, why don't you go do this? And why don't you go do this? I'm like, man, I sacrificed a lot. Don't really have a whole lot of friends that I've had for more than about 5 years because most of them are dead. One failed marriage that was complete epic failure, right? My unit had a 86% divorce rate on the marriages inside, but if you look at the second and third marriages, it's almost 200%. At what point do I focus on my family, focus on kind of the things that everybody else has been doing. And then those folks who were making all the money, who were building the empires while I was overseas fighting, well, it's now my turn to do that. And it's their turn to step in.
Well, how do I step in then?
How do you step in?
Yeah.
Senator, congressman.
What's got the most power?
You know where I would start? I tell
No, I ain't
everybody,
starting anywhere. I'm starting at the top.
So we saw with COVID where the top was.
Where?
The two most important positions in anybody's life is the school board and their county sheriff. Those are the two most important positions.
County sheriff, why?
Because the county sheriffs are elected officials, and they essentially are the warlords of their county, is a way to look at it. They can stand up to the state police. We saw that a lot in New Mexico during COVID. So those types of things. But there's something else that you can do too. We have why are we here as a society? Why look at the freaking internet and the vitriol, and why are we here as a society? And it's, I think, primarily because of what I call the dysregulation of masculinity. And that dysregulation of masculinity and the problem we are having with men, especially young men, disengaging from society and just going into porn or video games or whatever because they're just so sad, quite frankly, right? And so depressed. We have to help them understand, like our parents did, or the men around us, or whoever our influencers were, our mentors. We have to distribute that information because it's not getting distributed at the community level anymore, and help them understand that they can do as little as 5 things and just completely change their life. In fact, there's few problems that a Western man has that if he just does 5 things, doesn't over-index on anything, most of his problems will be solved.
Okay, one is what? Stay fit?
No. One is read the Bible. And I don't care if you're not a Christian, you don't believe in God, any of that kind of stuff. People will turn around and say that they'll read, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius because they think it makes them sound a whole lot more reflective than they are. But the book of Proverbs is a whole lot better than Meditations is. Not to take away from what Marcus Aurelius wrote, right? But just read the Bible. And if you don't believe in God, read it for the wisdom, right? So you do that. The second thing that they need to do is they need to prioritize and serve others. This narcissistic, selfie world that we live in is just eating people. And so they need to prioritize and serve others. They need to find and slay dragons. They need to get wiser and stronger, mind and body. And they need to make more money. You do a combination of those 5 things, right? You read the Bible. That will teach you how to prioritize and serve others, which will give you a reason to find and slay dragons. The big dragon that I've taken on besides brain health is child exploitation and child trafficking. So that gives you a reason to find and slay dragons. And finding and slaying dragons gives you a reason to basically get smarter and stronger, to get what in the original biblical Greek is praus. And I can come back to that. And the second order effect of doing those things is you're going to make more money.
That's a fact.
Which is going to give you a whole lot more resources. And we tend to think of, the alpha male as the biggest, loudest steroid pump monkey in the room. And the kind of red pill movement, as freaking dumb as they are, has really engaged on that. And the problem with that is that their diagnosis of the problem is correct. There is a problem, but their treatment is just making the problem worse. And so if imagine if men were trained that way, and I saw on your Instagram, you're a Bible believing Christian, right? So whether anybody believes in that or not, still listen up. God said the meek will inherit the earth. The original biblical Greek word for meek is praus. Now, when we see meek, we think little old lady with no money, right? Well, Abraham was probably the richest man in the world at his time, right? Solomon definitely is probably the richest man the world has ever seen, right? And that's just historically accurate. So it has nothing to do with this weakness. That's just the way that the Western language has translated it. praus actually goes, you can find that word in the writings of Aristotle, and it refers to a war horse, right? Extremely powerful, capable beast that is under control, that is submissive to a higher power, right? Now, if somebody doesn't believe in God, that higher power could essentially just be higher ideals, right? You'll get those by reading the Bible. But if we taught men to be this way, right? Not be so narcissistic and not be like their life goal is to just be, making millions of dollars by drop shipping things from a beach somewhere. Like, well, enjoy the money because hell's going to suck. Like, where's the dragon you're going to slay? Where's the societal problem you're going to fight? How are you going to go fight for others? How are you going to go fight for people who can't fight for themselves, right? And that's where I think that podcasts like this, I've been on Patrick Bet David, like a bunch of them, right? I probably do 35 podcasts a year. Those platforms are so important that I would actually say, Brad, please don't run for political office, because this is going to be more influential to the next generation of the country, which the next generation is the only thing that can actually change things. You and I aren't gonna be able to do it, right? I'm 46, you're very clearly 37. So we're not gonna be able to do much, but the next generation, kids in high school right now who would be listening to this podcast, they're the ones who are gonna be able to change things. They're gonna be able to change the workplaces. They're gonna be able to change politics. They're going to be able to change our society for the better, but we have to teach them how.
Well, and that's the hard part, because the government, schools, and they are working against us.
Yeah.
Which again, dude, it's tough. I had to get my kids out of public school.
Me too.
And I don't care what anyone says, like conspiracy, you're a conspiracy guy. Look, dude, they were trying to teach them the craziest stuff. It makes no sense. Then you go to the school and it's like, dude, it's all the way up. It's all the way up. The school board is okay with this. Okay, who elected these people? Well, then you start to think, well, dude, if it's corrupt, how do you know? Like, what if everyone didn't elect them, but whoever is in charge said they won? Who's counting them damn votes?
Yeah.
Who counts the votes?
That's a great question.
Yeah, again, that's a whole nother thing.
That's something I don't know.
Yeah, but like the last election, they say, don't be one of them. It was stolen. Come on, guys. Like, dude, I guarantee you, I think there was a scam in the last election. And I think when they said that the Republican counters weren't allowed to watch for certain times, it's like, well, first of all, who's in charge of that? Why are the Democrats in charge of who can count and who can watch and who can't? Mm-hmm. Well, it's not supposed to be that way, but they were. Okay, again, based on the governor, based on who? The mayor? Who's enforcing all this shit? If I was a Republican counter and you told me I can't watch, I'll be like, bullshit. What are you going to do about it? Like, I'm watching. But at the end of the day, like, there was people saying that this person won, mm-hmm. but who counted the votes? Who's counting these votes?
So that sounds like solving that problem sounds like a business opportunity for a young entrepreneur who's going to need some capital, and he'll probably come to you for investment, right? So you see,
they don't want it. They don't want it solved. That's why you have the what was it called, Dominion machines.
Sure.
Yeah.
That there's probably an element of truth to that. If we are claiming we're small government people, we've been complaining about the government for the last hour, right? Talking about how it's not as conspiratorial as people think. It's just that it's people. But that's why I disagree. Ultimately, that it's just a bunch of dumb people. No, I believe there's a bunch of smart people controlling a bunch of dumb people, and there are some, I don't want to say sinister, but definitely greedy. Yes.
Let's say intentions, reasons.
But does that surprise you?
No.
Right.
But that's why you say, why don't people
greed
do their
is not
part?
A conspiracy, though.
I know, but you say, why don't
nature.
people do their part? The reason, like, I'm not running for Congress, because I already know, even if I won, which is so far of a freaking long shot, I can't go in there and do anything. If right now I could blink my eyes and I would wake up November 20th, or what is this, the day they vote, 24th? November 11th? What is it?
I don't remember this year. I think it's 20th.
I don't even give a shit. If I could blink my eyes.
That doesn't mean don't go vote. You should vote.
And become the president of the United States. And I bet you anything, I would do 10 times better job than Kamala or Joe.
100%.
I would be assassinated for sure. Why? Because I would walk in there and say, okay, guys, the stupidity's over. You know what I'm saying? Even if it costs
You're
me.
You're fired.
Everybody's
fired. This
fired.
guy. Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I would fire everybody.
Yeah.
I would say all 454, however many people are in Congress, 535 total, including me. People are going to be like, oh my God, he's committing suicide of himself. No, I'm fixing it.
Right.
And how you fix it is you bring in new people. They're all volunteers. I would not give them $100 million. I'd give them nothing. And
volunteer.
And the loads you make, the laws you make, you are going to live with. So there are no separate.
Then only the wealthy can do it.
I don't really care who does it, as long as when you come in, you're not paid. There's no lobbying, and there's term limits. That would solve 90% of it.
That would solve a lot of it, and
knowing that you're going to be gone in a year, or two. There's no backroom 20-year-old relationships that ain't never going anywhere, right. Which is, feeding the kitty over here. It's like, come on, guys, it's corruption. It's all it is.
It is corruption. And if people talk about wealthy businessmen running for Senate and how that's a bad thing, I completely disagree. Because if you're a wealthy businessman, especially if you self-made, bootstrapped a business, raised capital, like I've raised millions of dollars in venture capital, raised money for venture capital firms, right, for LP, not just like making introductions and stuff. Careful with that. Those people, they know how to run an organization. They know how to read a P&L. They know how to make things work. And they have a lot of scars, and they've made a lot of mistakes, and so they know how to solve those. And that is one of the reasons why I think, like, I am not I see a wealthy businessman running for Congress. I'm not going to immediately discount him. We're like, okay, let's see what his policies are. Let's see what he thinks. I mean, is it any reason why the people who think that we should have a, $30 minimum wage or $27 minimum wage have never actually run a business? If one of my businesses, right, so my data company, if I suddenly had to pay every single, human who was doing data entry $30, we'd last 6 months. No.
What you would do is you would be forced to, so you'd have to pay them, and then you'd raise your price, and the consumers would pay them.
So that's the reason why DeliverFund is a nonprofit, because I watched the Defense Industrial Complex work. I know that if there was suddenly a bucket of $10 billion to fight child trafficking that was available within the government, and the way the government works is funding is done in buckets, so there can be like $1 billion over here that's not getting spent, but because it's allocated to that bucket, it can't be transferred over to this bucket, right? It's really dumb. And so if there was suddenly $10 billion available to fight child trafficking, Boeing and DynCorp and Palantir, probably even Google, would all step up and with solutions, and they would spend millions. Halliburton, yeah, they would all step up and they would say, hey, because now they have an incentive to do so. So they don't have an incentive to build those tools because they cost millions of dollars. They may have spent millions of dollars on supercomputers and programming talent and data storage, like big tech company. And I can't sell it to law enforcement. Law enforcement doesn't have any money. When we first started working with law enforcement at DeliverFund, I was literally buying them laptops because they didn't have laptops. And that's a real quick way to run out of money, by the way, when you start buying hardware for law enforcement. So we figured out online SaaS solutions and said, hey, look, we'll make it available. We'll make it available for free, but you got to figure out how to access it. Those tools, like, we're a nonprofit because there's no financial incentive to try to make the problem bigger. And that's what you see a lot in the fight against human trafficking is people confuse fighting with winning. And they're interested in fighting because maybe they never served in the military or anything, so they get to go overseas and play undercover guy for a little bit, and it kind of scratches that cool guy itch. And they like to say they were in the most dangerous parts of the world. man, if you weren't in Lashkar, Afghanistan, you weren't in Helmand province, you weren't in the most dangerous part of the world. Like you were in freaking Disneyland. And so if you weren't losing people, like if people were not dying, you were not really in that dangerous of a place. So also that's not scalable. So let's build the weapons and tools and take away the financial incentive. And let's make it so that every time we help law enforcement or help a law enforcement agency, our unit economics go down. We can actually fight human trafficking better, faster, and cheaper. And we don't have to wait for the government to come along. Because again, I don't really want the government involved other than pointing guns at bad guys and putting handcuffs on them and then the prosecutors doing their part, which is extremely important. So what I want what I want industry to do is we do the data, take away the financial incentive. So it's donor funded, which means that we have to file 990s every year. I mean, it's extremely transparent on where the money goes, who's doing what, and then we just continue to make the machine work. Versus if Microsoft was doing what we're doing, or if Boeing was doing what we're doing for just over $3 million a year in a budget, that would be $300 million. And that right there is the incentive mislines. And that's why at DeliverFund, we give everything to law enforcement for free. And I get a lot of donors who say, well, can't you get law enforcement to pay for this? Like you're missing the point.
Why don't you get people to donate it?
Donate what?
The law enforcement access.
Like, so they do. That's the thing.
Like, hey, Lightspeed VT, you want to give us $10,000 so these police can get this training?
That's what we do. So one of the big pieces that we work with law enforcement on is they don't have manpower, and because of police unions, they really can't get the manpower. So we have, as an example, in Houston, Texas, they have a full-time human trafficking analyst. That is a DeliverFund employee, salaried, benefit. We actually took him from the intelligence community where he was hunting down IED bomb makers that was distributing bombs not only in the war zones but also through Europe. And he now shows up at the Houston Police Department every day and hunts down human traffickers.
How does he find them?
It's all online.
And a lot of people get it confused. Human trafficking, to me, is not the biggest issue. Child trafficking is more so, because children are defenseless. I mean,
almost the same thing.
I know, but like, dude, you got a grown man wanting to, get trafficked. Probably not. But you got a little boy. I'm gonna help the little boy before the man. Why? 100%. You're a man, dude. Like punch the dude. Like break out. But and I can help you if I can try to help you. I know you're incarcerated. You're in shipping containers. But a small child being trafficked over to this rich person to molest for 10 years and then discard, dude. I want to help the children.
So the way that we do that though is, traffickers are not dumb enough, and the tech companies that run these advertising platforms are not dumb enough to advertise a 14-year-old girl as 14. So they advertise her as 19.
Advertise her where though?
Front-facing internet. There's over 30 different websites. If you started looking for it right now on your phone, you'll find it in 5 minutes.
Looking for what?
Looking for commercial sex, especially in Las Vegas. Right. So there's websites that specialize.
Yeah. Like here you can call, what do they call them? Entertainers.
Sure. But what happens if you are in Tuscaloosa, Alabama?
They're called.
So Vegas is different.
They're called hookers.
Well, they're called trafficking victims.
But they're not all trafficking victims.
About over 80% are. Because even when let's just say a 19-year-old college girl decides that she wants to prostitute herself because she wants the red bottom shoes, right? Let's just say that happens.
Yeah,
that does happen.
Yeah, I'm thinking that is usually the case, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that is not usually the case.
Really?
Usually within about 2 to 3 dates. So traffickers are watching those advertisements, and they know that this girl belongs to that guy, and this girl belongs to this guy, and this girl belongs to this guy. But this girl's new. So they'll schedule a date with her. They will show up as if they're a customer, beat her unbelievably senseless, force addict her to drugs in a process that they call seasoning that is basically made to break their will. And I won't go into detail of what they do, but it's demonic, and then turn them back out. Like, so, and then
kind of own them because they're so strung out.
Yeah. And some guy comes along and says, oh, like, I'm traveling for business. I'm going to get on the website, get a little company for the evening. And to him, this appears to be a prostitute. But again, over 80% chance in everywhere outside of Vegas. Vegas, it's different. Those numbers are lower because there's this common myth.
They're straight up hookers here.
Yeah. Well, not as many as you would think. You guys have a major human trafficking problem here.
Dude, listen, I've heard about tunnels underneath casinos. I don't know if it's true, but
wouldn't surprise me here.
Like tunnels underneath casinos.
A lot of money to be made.
Exactly. And there's zillions, and like rich people come here and order like 10-year-olds.
Yeah. I mean, so
they get delivered 10-year-olds. To me, that's trafficking.
So Black Hat is happening this week.
What you're explaining is sad and it's unfortunate. And man, come on, don't you have more respect for yourself? Hey, you know, because if you ever like talk to some of those trafficked women, they're not in cages. Like they're out in the hotel rooms. Like, why don't they just talk? You know, run.
Let me give you a great example. Well, two. You know any women who've been physically abused?
Do I know any?
Yeah.
I mean, they've claimed it. I haven't witnessed
any. Sure.
Does
your wife have friends who probably, you know, been physically abused at some point, right? Or you know the woman who is.
My wife's been physically abused by me. And I just
clearly you wouldn't have seen it because you would have stepped in and intervened. But my point is that 1 in 3 women in this country have experienced some type of sexual violence, right? Or physical violence. So why don't they just leave, right? Psychological chains. Well, like, we don't understand it.
I know, but that's different because maybe they're in a relationship, but like when I just think trafficking, I'm thinking chains and containers and
that's not real. That's not real. That's what people think. Great example.
So is that why Andrew Tate is being charged with trafficking?
So I don't know the Tate case. I have not seen it. I do not know the man, and I don't want to comment on him.
Yeah, but the definition matters.
All I can say is based on what I have seen, you are right. That is why he is being charged with trafficking. I don't know if it's true or not because I haven't really looked at it.
When you hear trafficking,
because it's overseas,
most people are assuming chains and against their will. They're not thinking, "Oh, I beat your ass once and talked you into going out and, you know, prostituting for money."
I give you 2 examples.
And then bring me your money. That's called a pimp.
Yeah.
That's trafficking.
Yeah. So pimp is just a word for human trafficker. There's no such thing as a pimp. I'll give you 2 examples. One is out of Vegas, in operation happening in the Southwest U.S., south of here. Homeland Security, we're working with them on a counter human trafficking operation, giving them the intel. We're positive that this woman is a trafficking victim. They get her in. She denies it. No, I'm not. I'm just a prostitute from Vegas out here to make some money. Yada yada. And we're like, man, that doesn't make sense because like we know the difference.
And there's an adult.
Yes. She's like 20. Our software knows the difference. And so after a couple hours, finally she breaks down and she says, "You can't arrest me because he has my baby." And so we get her phone. We don't. Law enforcement gets her phone. They rip her phone and they see, right? They get her permission. They see all the text messages where she's threatening that her trafficker is threatening to hurt her child. And the guy the customer thinks that he's communicating with that girl, but he's not. He's communicating with the trafficker who's in Las Vegas and she's in, let's call it Phoenix. And he's like, and he doesn't tell her how much he negotiates the price for, because when she says how much money she got, he wants to know if she's stealing or not. So he's controlling her remotely because he's got her baby. And that's how a lot of trafficking works. Another part of trafficking in westernized countries, right? When we talk about men being trafficked, we're in large numbers, you're predominantly talking about the third world, right? You're not talking about America. You're not talking about France, right? It happens here, but not as much as you think. Here's the way, and every parent, listen up right now. Social media is the gateway. So we put big locks on our doors. We get guns. We get dogs. We put alarm systems in. And you got any daughters?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what happens in every household, in every responsible household at some point, who has a daughter? I grew up with 3 sisters, so I know how this works, right? The daughter starts getting older. she wants to wear age inappropriate clothing to the mall, wherever, right? Wherever kids go these days. And dad says no. And she flips off at him, and he grounds her and sends her to her room. In my day, my sisters would go to their room, listen to the Cranberries, and write some angsty girl stuff in their journal. And that was the end of it. Today, she gets on the phone that her dad doesn't know that she has, that's connected to the neighbor's Wi-Fi because the neighbor girl gave her the password. And she makes a TikTok video about how she's mad at her dad. That is a point of vulnerability. And that trafficker slides right in there. And he's a 40-year-old man who's 3,000 miles away. But that profile says that he's a good-looking 16-year-old boy who comes from a lot of money. And he's just over in the next state. And he starts chatting her up, starts manipulating her. Young girls, easiest people, teenage girls are the easiest to manipulate. He starts chatting her up, and he gets her to send that photo that she regrets. And at that point, it gets her to send more and more and more. And then eventually he says, here's what you're going to do. And if you don't, then I'm going to post this on Facebook. Your parents are going to see it. Your pastor's going to see it. Your whole school's going to see it. And so he does what we call sextortion. He sextorts her, and then he eventually says, hey, you need to come meet me at the McDonald's on this corner. And so she's been compliant this whole time, and she feels like, nothing has really gone that bad. And so she does. And he throws her in the car and takes her, locks her in. And at that point, it's like a straight up abduction. But it's not an abduction that is like the white van with free candy painted on the side rolling through the neighborhood. Right? It's really a psychological abduction to get her to a point where he can physically get control of her. And then at that point, it's all over for her. Because, right? So that's the way that trafficking happens today. And then he advertises. So traffickers have a way that they do this, and they usually have what they call a bottom, which is essentially their business manager. And it's really sad because it's a trafficking victim who becomes a trafficker. Right, it's a extreme version of Stockholm syndrome, and that woman, in order to get better treatment, kind of becomes his business manager, and he keeps the girls in line,
if you will.
Yeah, basically like the madam, and so she will be the one advertised. You see her, you're like, well, that's clearly a 20-something-year-old woman on that commercial sex advertisement, and then when a guy orders her or orders one of these women, that 14-year-old girl is who shows up.
Why didn't this 20-year-old go?
Because she's managing things. So they sent
But if I ordered a 20-year-old and a 14-year-old,
do you think the customer really cares that shows up?
Well, I mean, again, if I were into prostitutes, which again, adult wants to hump an adult, I'm not against that, but I'm not into prostitutes either. You won't ever say my name on any of your damn reports because I don't play in that arena. But if I called and wanted to, get that hot chick I'm seeing on the magazine and some little girl shows up, I'd call the police and I'd say.
But that's because you're a normal person. These men who participate in this industry they're not that way. And depending on how long they've been participating in the industry, it might have started with they were the guy who would have called the police.
See, like in the movies,
a couple years later,
in the movies, it makes it look like they're just regular businessman, lonely, ain't had his, stuff done in a while, so he calls a prostitute. And again, to me,
you know what? In the 80s, pre-internet, that's exactly what happened. The problem we ran into is smartphones and social media. So when you look at about a 5-year period from 2010 to 2015, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, great organization, highly, highly recommend supporting them. But they're a congressionally mandated nonprofit. They're not a government agency, right? The government gives them $60 million a year to fight human trafficking. And they'll tell you there are major ropes and strings and chains attached to the funding that they get that says what they can and cannot do.
Yeah, but there's also...
But they're a great organization.
But there's also reports that some of the top officials are involved in the trafficking.
100%. I mean, we've seen it in our cases. That's not conspiracy theory. That is fact.
So again, how come they're not arrested and charged?
Friends in high places? Is it really the only, like, I have seen that happen.
Well, then how come we don't get it out to the media so the masses go crazy? Because I think, generally speaking, there's a lot of, there's more of us good people than there are the bad people. And it's the good people aren't understanding, and the bad people are getting away with murder for some reason.
But that's why I'm sitting here, is helping people understand how it works. So
we need to invite you back for a round 2. This is like the longest in the history of dropping bombs.
That's what I'm talking about. I like to win it. I like to win at everything.
I know, but we should have been talking about this in the get-go.
The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they found that in a 5-year period, they had an 846% increase in suspected child trafficking cases, right? And now keep in mind, since about the same time, they've estimated that 1 in 6 missing kids, or missing girls, goes into the trafficking cycle, right? That's about...
And what happens to them when they're done?
They've got a shelf life, so to speak, of about 7 years. And then the traffickers either kill them or just kick them out on the street. And so what you see under the bridge is that washed up prostitute. But you don't realize that that's a girl who was trafficked from 15 to 27 years old. And then she was so washed up because of the heroin that, nobody wanted her anymore. And so the trafficker just kicked her out on the street. And that's the nice trafficker. What a lot of traffickers will do is they'll give the victim what they call a hot shot, which is where they just purposely OD them on heroin, because the traffickers and the bottom control the heroin. We've had so many victims who were addicted to extremely high levels of heroin, and they didn't know how to shoot themselves up. They didn't know how to procure it. They didn't have any connects. They didn't have any of that. And so the trafficker, the bottom, will basically order that girl to be killed. They'll give her a hot shot in the hotel room, leave the needle in her arm, leave the band on her arm, and cops show up and they're like, just another dead heroin whore. Case closed. Don't even investigate it. Move on to the next one.
Overdose.
Yeah, just an overdose. No, that was a homicide. So one of the policies that we are very big advocates of at DeliverFund, and we try to get law enforcement to implement, is that if you have what appears to be a prostitute who died of a overdose, you assume that is a homicide until you rule it out otherwise. But then the problem is, where are they, how do they do that? And how do they do that at that scale? Again, 846% increase in what is essentially a market cap. If I could tell you that, hey, go invest in this company and you're going to get an 846% increase in 5 years, you'd put everything you had into it, right? So that's the level that we're talking about here. And when you lay the data over each other, what you find is that the Facebook app came out in, I believe it was 2007. But smartphones were still expensive. A lot of people didn't know how to think about them, and the data plans were still expensive. By about 2010, the data plans actually got to the point where pretty much everybody, middle class and up, could afford a smartphone with an unlimited data plan. And so you saw broad adoption of smartphones. And of course, the first thing kids put on them is things that they can use to communicate with their friends that their parents aren't on. And that in 2010 was Facebook. Now it's Snapchat and, all kinds of other things. It's not really Instagram. When we talk to young girls, we find that Instagram, for the most part, is what they use to communicate with their parents, and Facebook is what they use to communicate with their grandparents, if you want to feel old. And they have other apps that they like to use. Well, anytime...
Like Roblox.
Yeah, Roblox. How about Xbox? It's got a chat feature. We had a young boy in the Southwest United States. If you go to our YouTube and just search for Noah, the Noah story, obviously not his real name, Dad was a cybersecurity engineer, smart dude, knew what he was doing with technology, limited his kids' technology. Young boy is playing Xbox or PlayStation, one of the two, doesn't really matter, gaming console. Starts chatting with another boy who's playing the same game because they have a chat feature. And that's over a period of months. That what it turned out to be was a child trafficker who was also a truck driver, got his home address, got his phone number. They off-platformed him from the game onto another chat app that kids use, because these things just kind of constantly come and go. And then finally hits him up one day and says, "Hey, I'm with my dad up the road, about a block up. We're visiting some friends. Why don't you come say hi?" So he okay, goes up there, walks up there, and they open the truck, and he climbs in, and they found that boy's phone in that front yard. Trafficker through the phone, probably drugged him. I don't really know the.
And what do they do with the little boys? Turn them into little gay prostitutes?
One of our analysts found him in about 4 hours, and about a few hours after that, a SWAT team kicked in his front door and rescued him.
Well, what happens to most of them? Like little boys, like you got to be gay to like little boys. So do they feed those to the people that like little boys?
So a combination of that, and they make explicit video material with them, and then they sell that on the internet.
Is it harder for a male to be trafficked than a female?
No. There's just
because to me, like you see the prostitutes, like when you
demand.
said you see them, I'm picturing, yeah, I've seen them. I don't see dudes out there prostituting.
There's a significantly larger market demand for women, obviously. And then, because let's face it, this is the demand is like 98% male. So bigger demand, but unfortunately, there isn't much of a demand for 16-year-old boys. There's a demand for 6-year-old boys or 7-year-old boys, right? So on the boy side, it's much younger, and which really angers us all. But like, so that was a gaming console. So any device that is connected to the internet that children congregate around, you will 100% have traffickers and pedophiles there.
Talking to your kid.
Without question. So you talk to your kid.
Like my kid's on Roblox, guaranteed she's been talked to by a trafficker.
So if you
and I tell my little girls, by the way, hate to interrupt, but if I don't, I'll forget. You don't give out our address ever to anyone. I don't care if they're your best friends. I don't care if you know them. Like, do not give our address out.
Well, and
they say they won't, but guess what? I'll bet you they've done it.
Also, if you are a young girl, young boy, and you send that photo that you really shouldn't have sent, right? Usually a nude.
Is that how they usually get you?
That's how they're getting, especially a lot of the boys these days.
And then
right?
they just
girls are
delete
kind of
their
hip
phone?
to it. If that is the case, go tell a safe authority figure immediately. Your dad, your mom, if they're not safe, a teacher, a law enforcement officer, tell somebody immediately.
If anybody wants you to send a naked picture of yourself,
don't do it.
Obviously, but if anyone ever asks you to do that, go tell a safe person.
Right. So if you we're developing some technologies that let's just say they're targeting algorithms. We can talk about that off air after this, but don't go run this experiment, but have your wife go do it. Go talk to teenage girls who have access to social media. You will have a very hard time finding a young teenage girl who has not been solicited by an older man sexually online. And we are developing some technology that's going to make those guys' lives real difficult, and very uncomfortable.
Predator poppers coming out,
yeah.
Like, with shows like,
Well, the problem with those is that the guys don't get prosecuted. So do you remember To Catch a Predator back in the day? You know, not a single one of those people went to jail.
What do you mean? They had to have.
No, they didn't.
Who's letting them go?
So that's your defense attorneys, right? Defense attorney says, hey, this is entrapment, right? So that's the problem.
How's that entrapment? They didn't entrap them.
But it is under the law under some circumstances. And so, they videoed it. The client had a right to privacy. And so most of those cases got thrown out. What we do at DeliverFund is 100% passive collection. We're not hacking into anything. We're not going into any place we're not supposed to. We just basically think of it this way. As that sick world is doing what it is it's doing in its commerce chain, we're just recording it. So if you're listening to this and with your follower count, I guarantee you 20% of the men who are listening to this right now are starting to get real uncomfortable, and beads of sweat are starting to.
Why? Because
they're wondering if their data is
traffickers?
no, even customers. They're wondering if their data is in our system.
It is.
It probably
and
is.
If your system's not connected to the CIA, it's in the CIA's.
Well, the CIA doesn't deal with this problem.
It's in the NSA. It's
problem.
dude. The government knows what
Government
you're up
knows
to.
everything that's going on,
If
I think,
you
on
went
the
to a
internet.
porn site and jacked off, looking at your screen, dude, your recording of beating off on your phone, looking at the porn site of adult women. It doesn't even matter. You jacking off. I guarantee you that footage is recorded.
You have to
and
assume
it is stored somewhere, and you're all going to get blackmailed one of these days.
You have to assume it is. And
Dude,
they're just
wouldn't it be funny
waiting
if
for you to run
somebody-
for Congress.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be funny if someone just texts you a text and you just got done rubbing one out and you're not realizing that the phone you're looking at is recording you? And now we got you, especially of DeliverFund. Now they're going, dude, you don't want that out. Well, now we're getting into like Epstein shit.
Well, that would be extortion.
But that's Epstein shit. That's why Epstein had so much control over people. Because, dude, they had these little girls and these little boys on these islands.
Mm-hmm.
And these rich, powerful people went over there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're used to getting whatever they want. So I want a little 10-year-old, then give me a little 10-year-old. And no cameras, nothing allowed. And all of a sudden, you got me. Now, dude, you show me, oh, shit, you recorded that. Well, dude, now you got me, and I ain't saying nothing. And when you come to my courthouse, not guilty, and hey, we're not releasing that list.
Yeah.
See what I mean? Like that, it's a dead giveaway. Who is involved? Why don't they get arrested?
So like, look at Epstein's a great example. Do I believe that every single person who was around Epstein was a sicko?
No.
I mean,
Me either.
that
You know
makes
why?
sense.
How I know this? Because Richard Branson was supposedly a guest and yada, yada, yada. And so now they're saying, oh, well, Necker Island, they're all traffickers, scumbags.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I've been on Necker Island, and I played chess with Richard Branson, and there was no girls, and there was nothing about trafficking. But if you go 100 years from now when they find out Branson might have been, Brad Lee was on that island, and his wife, so they must have been both involved.
I was just on an island, not in the ocean, in a lake that a billionaire owns, and the Epstein thing came up, and he was like, man, he's a weird dude. So he was like, he's like, I jumped on his plane to go to a charity event in another country. He's like, and that ride was all I needed to know. And he's like, I booked my own jet back. He's like, I called my pilot and said, come get me, because I ain't riding home with this guy. So when I see somebody went to an island once, was in a meeting with somebody, whatever, especially a high profile person who runs in those circles, like, okay, I see it once, but man, you went to the island 30 times. There's something wrong.
Yeah. Well, that means you've been doing it.
But the point of all of this is that the internet has created a scale problem for human trafficking. In my day, the weirdo, the trafficker, the pedophile, the societal predator, in a small town, everybody kind of knew who he was, and all the parents knew to keep their kids away. What the internet did, especially with social media apps, is it gave all those sick freaks access to all of the children globally. And so now it's just a numbers game for them, man. It's a sales funnel, right? They know they got to talk to 100 12 to 16-year-old girls, to get 50 to talk back to them, to get 25 to engage them in conversation, to get 10 to engage them in a long-term conversation, to get 5 to do something, to do something that they will regret, to get 1 to actually show up. And that one girl is worth about $96,000 a year in tax-free money to that trafficker. So that trafficker runs, so let's just make the math easy, call it, $100,000. That trafficker runs basically 4 to 6 girls, $400,000 to $600,000 a year tax-free. That's a big financial incentive.
So real quick, because again,
we're getting long.
Well, I mean, dude, like shit, it's been a couple hours already. These are supposed to be like half hour to an hour.
We'll cut this up.
Well, number one, I want people to do something about child trafficking. Again, I'm not heartless against adults, but once they're adults, like, dude, like fucking tap on the shoulder of a policeman or something. Like, dude, I mean, you're an adult, bro. Yeah. But I want children helped, because children have no ability to defend themselves. Right. So it's like the little 10-year-old boy that, and by the way, you also know that it's illegal. Like, hey, you go get a prostitute. I'm not thinking, oh, what a sleazy scumbag. I'm thinking, oh, poor guy needs to get a prostitute. But I also assume the prostitute's an adult and that's up to her. And if someone would have asked me prior to today, Brad, do you think prostitution should be legal? My answer is yeah. Why? Well, because, dude, the girl can screw someone if she wants to, and the guy can pay for it if he wants to. Like, who are you to say that they can't? They're two. But what if they're two grown adults?
What if I told you that every country that's ever legalized prostitution saw a significant increase in human trafficking?
But I said up till today, because if you'd asked me before I heard you, I would have thought to myself, dude, prostitution is just a stupid law. Why? Sure. Dude, if I'm a grown man and that's a grown girl and she wants to let me give her $500 to do what I want to do to her, that's up to her. She's a grown woman. I would have said that. Why? Because to me, prostitution is you can legally sell your body.
I thought the same thing.
And like as a guy, dude, if I knew I could get $500 a whack, and there's grown women that want to pay me to whack them, well, I should be able to whack them. $500 a whack. Let's go. But that's prostitution. It's against the law. So I would have said, prostitution should be legal, but child prostitution, no.
It's exploitation.
They need to be saved. Yeah. Children. I'm talking about kick the door in and save them type of children.
Absolutely.
And we need to do that.
Many of your 20-year-old prostitutes
were
have been trafficked since they were 14, 15, 16, and they don't know anything else, and they think that's their only worth. So,
well, that's why we need to help them at the child level.
But that's where you want to get really into the like sicko pedophiles and stuff like that are selling kids between each other and trading in content and like this really disgusting stuff. Those people are actually pretty technically sophisticated, and so the best way to catch them is through the open system that we can all see, right? People will go over to Thailand and they'll be like, oh, we're going to go catch the Americans that are driving child trafficking in Thailand. It's like, well, those same guys are doing really sick stuff here. Why not just catch them here where we have the least corrupt, I'm not saying we don't have corruption in our law enforcement, but the least corrupt law enforcement system in the world, and they're most likely to be held accountable.
Where are you? Where do you live?
I live in Whitefish, Montana.
Damn.
Ski Town.
Well, I was going to say, if you're in California, Arizona, you can just pop back up here in a couple of weeks. We can revisit this.
Oh, it's easy. It's an easy flight. And again, with all the venture work that I do and other companies, like I basically live on Delta.
Well, dude, I'm going to have you back. I want to talk more about this. I want to get more exposure out there. Although, believe it or not, I did talk about this once before. It was my most watched for a second, and then most suppressed, and
sure,
it was over. Like, so somebody don't want us talking about this.
The word human trafficking, we have proof is suppressed by the algorithms. So we can talk about how you can
too late, dude.
No, how you can for your thumbnails and things like that, how you can kind of get around that.
Oh, well, tell my team because I want the word out
for sure,
folks. Also, go support him like personally with the GoPills. Yeah. Is that GoPills.com?
Yep. And a percentage of that goes to a percentage of our profits goes to not only help fight child trafficking. Everything I do, a percentage goes to help fight child trafficking, because industry is the best way to fund charity, but also it goes to traumatic brain injury research for our SOF vets and our military vets. So we contribute to that as well.
So how can the Bomb Squad help you? Obviously support you, but GoPills.com, donate.
GoPills and then donate at DeliverFund.org. And if you have a business, my guess is this is primarily consumer facing, but if you have a tech business, a financial institution, a hotel, a motel, your business is probably being used by human traffickers, and my data company can solve that problem for you. So just reach out.
What's that called?
I'm not publicly talking about it yet.
All right.
But we can solve that problem for you. We've done it for some of the biggest publicly traded companies in the country, and we can do it for you. And the best place to reach me that I'm actually going to pay attention is LinkedIn. And my team will pay attention to Instagram and Facebook and let me know.
At Nic McKinley?
At the.nic.mckinley. Or you can just go to nicmckinley.com, and there's all the stuff there, and it'll take you anywhere you want to go.
Folks, go help this dude. He's out there helping the people that need help. Let's help him. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
I'll have you back again.
Thanks for having
Until
me.
next time, keep it real.